You're listening to the PR Wind Down Podcast, the show for public relations professionals who are ready to see real change in the PR industry. We are your hosts, April White and Laura Schooler. Let's get ready to wind down.
So I had a crazy thing happen over the weekend. Do you want to hear about this?
What happened?
So my friend Erin decided that she wanted to go on like a hiking adventure. She had found this really cool place where you could like go to a tunnel from an abandoned railroad and found it was, 10 miles west of where I live ish. So we went on this wild adventure, but you had to take like a Forest Service road and then find some junction, but you run out of service. So because we didn't really know where we were going, we got lost a couple of times, never found the hike. Finally got out of the car to see if the thing that we did find could be a hike, only discovered, no, it really just goes through a cow pasture. Like, not helpful. We get back to the car, jump back in. I was like, all right, which way are we going? We're going north, south. Like, where are we going to try to find this hiking trail? Hit start. The car goes click, 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 click.
Battery dead.
Battery effing dead in the middle of nowhere.
This is like a James Franco movie. Did you have to saw your own arm off?
We have no service. No service. So we have to hike,
so
and we have 4 dogs with us. My dogs and her dog, one of her dogs.
You have to eat your dog?
No, none of this happened. I'm here. My arms are both intact, and I am not full of dog. So,
okay.
But what we did have to do was walk up a hill until we had reception and start trying to get like roadside assistance from my insurance. Nobody got back to us. We didn't even have enough reception to even really like take the phone call in when they called.
Right.
They assigned it to somebody in like way too far away that was never going to come on a Sunday. Erin tried calling another tow truck company who just completely ghosted us because I think they were like, we're taking a tow truck on these like overlanding tracks, right? So finally, we send out an emergency group text like, yo,
like
girls stuck. We were stuck in the forest. Is anybody in the area able to either come jump us and or if it's the alternator, just pile us in a car and drive us back to civilization until this can get handled, right? Because we can't, the sun was going down. It was getting colder and colder. We were starting to like get cold.
I was going to say, what was the weather like?
And so finally, one of my friend's husbands, who's well connected to a bunch of guys in town, just kept calling and texting all of them until they were out drinking beer. And then we're like, why is Daniel calling 800 times? And finally they're like, oh, we're on it. So they send out this truck. They must have, I don't know, they got there so fast. They must have gone like twice the speed limit the whole way there, going on these, back dirt roads, 100 miles an hour. I'm exaggerating. It wasn't that fast, but like they zoomed to us. And they had a diesel truck with 2 batteries. So they were able to swap out one and put the bad battery to get charged just long enough to put it back in to my car so my car would work. So, but then I couldn't turn off my car or the battery was not going to restart, right?
Right.
So it was this whole adventure that we did not mean to take. And it was like so stressful. Part of the reason that they sprung into action, we found out later, was because this is not funny at all. But there was a woman that disappeared on the same fire road 6 months ago. They never found her.
That's those stories. People went on a hike and then they find their skeleton 6 months later. Oh my God.
Yeah. So actually where we were was not a safe place to be broken down. We're out there with 4 dogs in the wilderness. What are we supposed to do? Sleep in the car overnight? Do we walk home?
Oh my God.
It would have been dark, you know what I mean? So anyway, it had a happy ending, but it certainly could have been on Dateline.
It had a yappy ending.
Non-Dateline happy ending. But it could have broken either way.
Wow.
So we
What's
won't
that
do
movie?
that again.
27 hours later or 42 hours?
We only had like one thing of water and no food.
So wait, do you have to get a new battery?
I got one today. Yeah.
Well, you're back. You're out.
I'm back. I'm here. I'm alive. I live to tell the story. I didn't really get an exercise in the end, but we did have an adventure.
My exercise was going to this kind of high-end outdoor strip mall.
Hilarious.
It was pouring here. Pouring, pouring, pouring. I mean, like sideways, pouring, pouring. So couldn't go outside really.
So funny.
I mean, so we were sort of outside, but
Right.
get into store after store.
All right. With that, I would like to introduce today's interview segment. Our guests today are Tricia Ulberg and Daniel Bisett from We Rock DM and the podcast of the same name. I was a guest on their show a couple of months ago, so go check that out. And just as a quick intro, We Rock DM is an award-winning creative agency with a focus on website design, app design, branding, and digital marketing strategy. And Daniel Bisett is an award-winning digital marketing instructor at McCombs Business School at the University of Texas. And Tricia is an experienced creative director. And also you're at the University of Texas as well, correct?
Correct. I'm usually Daniel's TA in that course.
Got
So,
it.
yes,
Okay.
we work
Amazing.
together.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I knew there was also the university connections. So today we want to discuss how brands can authentically express themselves visually and in the press. And then we can get into sort of the necessity for both things to be working together in tandem. So welcome, you guys. I'd love to just kind of kick it off by asking, how do you help brands figure out what their visual look and or, hanging their virtual shingle should look like based on what they stand for, their differentiators, their tone, all of that? Like, how do you get to the bottom of that?
That's a really good question. Daniel, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You go right ahead, Tricia.
All right. Yeah. It's really important to make sure that we're asking the right questions from the very beginning so they can visualize what they want their brand to represent. Branding is the most difficult thing you can do as a designer. It is the hardest thing because it's so personal and it has very lasting effects on your entire company. I mean, it's really important to get it right. It's their voice, right? What do we want to say with this brand? And so, yes, so that's what we do. We just make sure that we ask a lot of questions. And then also by doing that from the very beginning, we help lead a client through the process so they feel like they're part of it because it's a journey. So when you're at the end of it, it feels like there was a lot of thought that went into it, right? And it ends up becoming a better brand in the end. So lots of questions.
If they don't already kind of have a brand manifesto of sorts or aren't really sure what it looks like, I'm sure this happens to you and they just come to you and they're like, make us a website. And you're like, you don't have a brand. How do you navigate that? Right.
Oh yeah. And that does happen a lot.
I'm sure it does. I just put myself in your shoes for 10 seconds and I was already channeling that being an issue.
They might have a brand that they had their, 7-year-old niece draw. And it's attached to some type of, emotional cord that is very difficult to separate them from. One of the first things that we try to identify is who are they selling to? Because a lot of times these brands don't even know who their primary customers are. And so when we help them identify who they're making their most money with or who they're having the most fun working with, then that helps us say, okay, so these are your people that you're targeting. This is your image. What do you think they actually see when they see that? And then we let them come to the conclusion often that they need to upgrade. And then
you lead them down the path to making their own decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make them think it's their idea.
And it should be their idea. And for a lot of people who aren't, in the design world or the marketing world, digital marketing world, a brand is a logo. And that's not what branding is, right? There's the logo, but there's the whole brand. So we help kind of educate them and help them see how that is going to affect so many different aspects of their business.
Yeah. So what do you do if they have a hand-drawn logo from their 6-year-old that they are dying to use? Do you incorporate it? Do you adapt it?
I mean, how long is a piece of string? We do what we got to do at the end of the day.
Okay, fair.
We've got a client that is stuck with a logo that was developed by a junior in-house. I don't know whether they don't want to offend them or what. And at the end of the day, we truly just had to put our hands in the air and say, this goes against our best practice principles. We've put everything on the table to recommend against it. But if this was what you want, then this is what you're going to have. So, but
Yeah.
So now they have a website that looks very much like that logo. So it is going to be interesting to see if they want to continue down that path. But
Right, because it informs everything else.
it
But what I have
does.
to do personally is because I'm embarrassed, right? Our byline is at the bottom of that website, so it
Yeah.
reflects on us. But at the end of the
Right.
day, I had to separate my own embarrassment from what the client wanted and just say, you know what? I don't always know what's right.
Mm.
It's totally up to them. I think I know what's right, and it ain't this. But I didn't want my own ego, my own emotion to be the ultimate factor of me saying, no, we're not going to do that.
What about, have you ever had clients come to you and say, this is our competitor's website. We want it to look exactly like that.
Oh, yeah.
And then what happens?
Haha. I have a story about that. So
Let's hear this.
I was a freelancer for a company that had an internal website design department. They would initially start out the design process with their clients, who are all dentists, by the way, by saying, look through our portfolio and tell us which designs resonate with you the most, right? So the problem with that is that very often they would find a design that they loved so much, and they would say, I want it to look like that. It was tough because we're like, okay, well, this is supposed to inspire the design, but we can't make it look exactly like that because that is a design that's owned by another company. And one time I got a little bit too close, and sure enough, the other doctor was pretty upset that there was another website out there that looked similar to theirs. Yeah, it was a problem. So yeah, it's a tough one. Ultimately, people understand that they need to have something that looks original and unique. So that doesn't happen a lot, but it can be tough.
Conversely, you get the ones that want total unique, and what they don't realize is that one, you don't want to reinvent this wheel that everybody is trained on now called the website, right? And two, if you do want to reinvent this wheel, it is not going to be cheap. It's going to take forever. Nobody's going to know how to use it, and it's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
That actually leads me to my next question, which I know when I talk to prospects just about PR and they start, oh, we need a new website, that they have oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes have an idea in their head of what a website will cost that is far from any reality. How do you explain to people why websites are so expensive? Because I think in their head, they're like, I don't know, I need a website, $3,000, $5,000, right? Let's pretend I'm a client that doesn't understand what goes into it. Like, why am I spending upwards of however many thousands of dollars, whatever you want to start at?
I will often get a read on a client. I ask them a budget question. I get that feeling of, oh boy, they have no idea how much this is going to cost. They've got a really solid budget for like marketing, but they've earmarked nothing for the website.
Yes.
I tell them, if you want a $5,000 website, I'll build you a $5,000 website. If you want a $50,000 website, I'll build you a $50,000 website. They are not the same thing. One is fully custom, has a professional designer like Tricia actually going in and meticulously thinking through every pixel that's on every single page, drawing out templates and building concepts, but also this whole concept of mobile responsive. We all know of websites that you look on your phone and it works, but not really. It's a bad experience. A website that is low on the budget tends to have those types of problems, or they're very, very slow. We can use these builders that I often don't like to name because of how nasty they are, but one sounds like sticks. And you build a website, it's free, quote unquote, and it's okay, and then somebody they try to open it, and it takes like 7 to 10 seconds for that page to load. That's because there's not a developer going in meticulously pulling out the code and trying to analyze it. You don't get that type of attention to detail at the low end. To be honest, a lot of mom and pop shops don't need that attention to detail.
Right.
Right? But these larger companies who effectively their website is what they're wearing to the party, right? If they're going to show up at the party in their pajamas and slippers and be the dude, then fine, so be it. But if they want to show up sharp in a suit and tie or a beautiful gown, they're going to have to pay for the time and energy and expertise that goes into the design and ultimately the back-end development that makes it sparkle.
Yeah.
I have to add on to that too. I know that in general, the design and branding industry is going through a really rough time right now. And there's a couple of stories I read just in the past couple of weeks about it. The chief design officers at companies that had them are, getting rid of them, because I think it's similar, not just the website and the technical aspects, but also just, even the logo, if you as some sort of company where your branding goes through every aspect of your customer touch points and your workforce and your office, if you have one, et cetera, whether it be consumer or B2B, that has a special expertise, experience, and training that also costs a lot of money. But so many people are like, again, I could give this to my teenage kid and do it for $500, when in fact it probably would cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it correctly. Have you been running into that more or the same as usual?
Always. I wouldn't say more. Websites have been undervalued since I've been in the industry.
Right. But what about everything else?
I do think that with the advent of AI, people are panicking. Yeah. And there are really genuinely some very incredible tools out there that help with website development, right? That are kind of AI. You can give them some parameters, some content. They take a template and they inject images and placeholder spots for these templates. It's pretty cool what they can do in a short period of time. But again, what you pay for is what you get. There's a reason, and it's not just because of branding, that a Maserati costs what a Maserati costs and a Honda Fit costs what it costs. There's a great deal of experience that goes into it, and that experience costs us our time to get here and our money to get here as well, and you end up paying for that as part of the
right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is sort of an abstract question, but I want to see if we can answer it if you guys feel comfortable. So I'm curious, what's the one thing that brands need to know about websites? And then does that or does that not translate to the one thing that your students need to know? Because I know you're teaching these classes. I'm just curious if there's some parallel between them or if it's the same thing.
Again, this is a double-edged sword. And I genuinely believe that a hyper-performant website is not required for everyone. You can go on Upwork and pay somebody $500 to build you a website, and it will be good enough, right? At least for the interim, for the next year or 2 years until you scale up, hopefully, and then can afford a better product. Those clients tend to need to understand the website is where their likeliest people are going to come and vet them, right? But if you own a mom and pop shop, a brick and mortar, people walk by your store, they don't really give a damn that your website is slow or ugly, because they walk in your store and they see your products and they think, wow, this is gorgeous. I love this outfit. And they totally forget that your website didn't even load before they walked in, right? Whereas for the larger clients whose digital marketing strategies, whose PR people are pointing them to their website, they must understand that the hub of all of their digital marketing, of all of their marketing strategy, be it digital material or otherwise, and their PR, they're pointing people to their website. So their website has to be dialed in. It has to be on brand. It has to be consistent with all of the brand voice that's being pushed out. And if there's any inconsistency, especially if it's a B2B situation, that's going to be a deal breaker straight out of the gate. They've lost that multi-million-dollar client simply because they didn't dial in their website. I try to be as transparent as possible with my students. Not everybody needs digital marketing. Not everybody benefits from digital marketing. The small mom and pop shops, if they want digital marketing, every single penny that they are paying you counts. And it hurts when it doesn't get a result. The reward that you get helping a small client grow is substantially worth it, but it's not a financial reward. Whereas with these larger clients who have tons of cash that they're just kind of throwing out and see what sticks, it's easier to enjoy that ride, but the reward is far less because, I mean, yeah, we improved this click-through rate 27,000%. That's a pretty big bonus. Yay, we did that. And we made a couple extra $1 million. Yay, that's great. That feels good. But it's not as tangible seeing that result because it's the officers that are probably rewarding themselves and patting themselves on the back, and we don't get to meet them.
Well, I know we're a little bit over time, but I do want to ask our final question, which is there anything that we missed that you wanted to talk about? And or if not, is there something you want to ask us?
Well, I loved our discussion about how PR and, digital marketing kind of entwine and work together. I thought that was a really great podcast episode. I think my question, April, would be from the PR perspective, what's important in terms of a website? Like, what does a website need to do in terms of PR?
So there are a couple of things. Number one, it just needs to make the brand look the part, because what we don't want to do is pitch a client that's new and they're still working on their website, and we go out to all the top tier media outlets and we hyperlink the website, or they Google it and they go, oh. It kind of goes back to all those brand authenticity points about, okay, you have to, do what you say before you can say what you do. And it's kind of the same with the website. The website needs to look like your brand and as you want to present yourself, because otherwise the danger is that, you never have a second chance to make a first impression, as everyone says, right? And the website does that. So if we all of a sudden start going out to media and that first impression of the website is not stellar, we might not get another chance. We might not be able to get in front of those reporters again. So that's one thing. I also think it's important that, and when brands are getting, excited about tracking ROI in a really granular way, one of the best ways to do that is if they have somebody that can help create vanity landing pages so that we can incorporate them into our media outreach. Unlike other forms of marketing, we can't use UTM tracking codes because it looks super smarmy, but we can use, we rock DM / new website offer, right? And then we can put that into our pitches and our press releases and things like that. You can kind of get by with UTM tracking codes in a press release, but that's kind of a rabbit hole aside. But really what I'm trying to say is, if you have somebody that has the capability of doing that, that's one way of making sure when you go to Google Analytics and you take a look at where the traffic came from, that you're able to justify the PR spend as it relates to website traffic and conversion. So that's another thing. And also, I would definitely encourage everyone to consider putting a press page up, even if they don't have press yet, because you're going to have press releases that you're going to put out at some point. You're going to at least be featured on things here and there, even if you're not doing concerted effort for PR, even if you hide that page for now. But on that page, ideally, you would have a press kit that's available for download for media and a media contact. But I would highly recommend doing that and then being ready to start putting those logos on that press page as you get the coverage, because it's really a big credibility boost.
The thing with B2B companies, which is really what I do all the time for PR, is that if a B2B's website is just, bad, not up to snuff, I think you said it before, April, it's like people question the legitimacy of that company, and then the legitimacy of the spokespeople, and then the legitimacy, and then who wants to talk to this company. For a consumer brand, it could literally be like the store where their products are. And if you can't get to them, then like, what are we doing here?
The requirements for how sexy a website is definitely go up on the B2C side.
Yeah.
I think if you're a really boring B2B tech brand, you can get by typically with a website that looks a lot more like,
A Sticks.
yeah, like somebody spent 20 hours on Sticks and like called it a day. In part too, because their customers are not necessarily website focused. I mean, especially logistics, supply chain, things like that, or IT. Like most of those people aren't going and looking for sex appeal on a website. They just need bare bones information,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
typically are more forgiving. I would definitely say though, on the consumer lifestyle side, the requirements of sex appeal on your website go up by a lot.
I was just going to say with B2B, typically, while the website might not need to look and feel as sexy, the performance of that website needs to be off the charts because the deal on the table, typically for B2B, is significant. Millions and millions of dollars potentially.
Right. It's not a $20 product. It's like
Right.
you're going
Even-
for a big dollar amount.
It
That's
makes
the
them look
a great
not
point.
legitimate.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, is this like a real company? Yeah.
sexy or
Well, and then
not.
it doesn't, right. And then it doesn't help your funnel. It's like you're driving all this traffic
Right.
and
And you
it's
lose
like,
them at the website.
yeah. So anyway, okay. Well, I so loved having you on. Is there any final thoughts, feelings you want to leave in addition to your contact information? Anything else you want to plug?
Other than genuine gratitude for having
Aw,
Yes, that was super. It was super fun. Thank you so much for having us.
super fun. And
And
where can people find you?
www.werockdm.com. DM stands for digital marketing. A lot of people ask us, what does the DM stand for? It stands for digital marketing. So that's our website.
Love it.
And our podcast is We Rock DM Amplified. So that's another way people can listen to us.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for your time. Appreciate it. And we look forward to keeping in touch and chatting again soon, hopefully.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, you guys. Bye. Okay. So, Laura, are you ready to get into our news of the day?
Sure.
This was a story that was in PR Daily, how we must prepare for the rise of AI in journalism. In this article, they talk about how a media placement was secured by an author who realized afterwards that the article was AI generated. And I think,
Wait a sec. Wait,
yeah,
back up. Explain.
Yeah.
So was this like a PR firm's client wrote a bylined article?
the author says, our agency sent out a press release for a client about 3 new leaders joining the company. They received the news clips. A new site popped up in the results. They hadn't heard about the site. They were initially excited. And then when they read the lead, the company had not hired a trio of new leaders. It had hired a trinity of new leaders. And there's not a human reporter alive who would ever refer to 3 new business leaders like that. So
Only somebody who worked in the Matrix might use the word Trinity.
or, like a religious publication, right? But otherwise it's like nobody in their right mind would ever use Trinity, especially because of the religious connotations. And so that was the one word that tipped off the agency that it was an AI generated news piece. I think this is extra interesting because we had a client recently who gave us a bylined article that their quote unquote team had written that got submitted for publication and was flagged by the publication's editor as being too AI generated. So they ended up rejecting it.
Wow. So how did they find out that it was AI generated? By reading it or?
So they must have used some kind of app or some kind of, online checker, which as a result, I have now encouraged our team to make sure if we get contact from a client, we run it through first, because I don't want it to reflect badly on our reputation. If we go to a publication, the publication flags it as AI because they don't know. Even if we say and even if we say the client wrote it, like, of course we're going to say, you know what I mean? So it's just not a good look.
Wow.
So I think it's something that we need to be really, really, really careful of as PR practitioners. And even if you're using a freelance copywriter or something, just to make darn sure that you're not going to get it flagged, right? And to be fully honest, I haven't actually gotten confirmation that the client did use AI to write it. But regardless of whether they did or didn't, it was flagged as such.
You
So
should run it through. There's
for the,
apps and sites that you can run this through, and
yeah,
they'll come back and say,
yeah,
we think this is AI, or this is definitely AI, or half of it was generated by
right.
AI.
And then a piece of it, I mean, and you should be doing that for plagiarism too, right? Especially if client's
Right.
writing it or the freelancer is, or even your team, to be honest. I mean, just to be extra. But
Oh, totally.
but I think that it should just be a best practice now with AI in the equation that, you need to check for plagiarism and check for AI generated content before you submit anything to a publication.
Do you think that there's any amount of AI generated content that should be permissible in a bylined article or an op-ed or something?
I mean, I think if you want to use it as a jumping off point and then reword it, I don't see anything dramatically wrong with that.
Like to provide you with an
It,
outline or a
yeah, or some research, but then you
right, some
definitely,
data that you
but go
wouldn't have
back
said.
and double check the data, right? Because you
Oh,
also
oh,
don't know
100%.
that AI is
You
not
have
fully
to.
right. So
Yeah,
it's really that at the end of the day, are they actually saving you time and money, or are you just rewriting it completely?
right.
And if it's the latter, I mean, if you're stuck and you have nowhere to start and that's how you start, and that gives you an idea because you have something on the page to work with, then fine. But at the end of the day, just double check that it's actually saving you time, because if you're rewriting the whole stupid thing anyway, then did it save you any time or money? Or is it
No.
just in your imagination that it did,
And
right?
money is time, or time
And
is money, or
yeah,
both.
as you know, even from, when you're trying to edit someone else's work, if there's something already in the page, it actually becomes harder than to create or envision from your own brain and your own experience a new way of saying something, because it's already on the page as a certain way and is stuck in your head, right? It's a little bit like getting a song stuck in your head and then deciding you're going to write a song, and it's like, I mean, isn't your song
Too
going to
much
sound,
influence.
yeah, isn't going to sound like
Right.
the song you just heard that's in your head, the playing on repeat, right? It's
Yeah.
difficult to break out and do something new then. So I would just encourage everybody not to lean too heavily on AI, and really work on your writing skills, because AI is only going to be generating things that are very basic and direct, but it's not going to have that kind of artful flair. It's not going to have the push and pull of, breaking grammar rules on purpose, for effect,
Mhm.
like having short sentences here and there that are there just to, to create that arc of emotion. And there's no way that AI is going to do that. So I would say one thing that we really need to think about as practitioners is how to become more artful writers that are going to clearly be drafting things that AI is just incapable of, because it's got that kind of finesse to it.
Right. I've, run things through all, a number of the different ChatGPT similar services and ChatGPT. There's been times where they 100% got it wrong. And like you said, using words that it's like, oh my God, what reasonable person would ever say it like that, right?
No, a trinity of
Yeah.
executives. Yeah, no. So I think that's all I really have to say about that one. Would you like to wrap it up?
I would love to so much to wrap it up.
Thank you for tuning in for the PR Wind Down podcast.
And thank you to Daniel and Tricia for joining us for a really great interview.
Remember to submit your own agency stories and questions and share our show with your friends and colleagues. If you subscribe and leave us a rating, it will help us reach new listeners like you. We
Can't wait
wait
to
to wind down with you again next
time.
time. Hey, that was pretty on. That was because you did it with the orchestra fingers.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was Leonard Bernstein.
It was amazing. Well done.